Well, this is the latest project. It's a Sencore SM152 sweep and marker generator. Of course, the SM stands for sweep marker. It's one of a series that Sencore made, and it doesn't work. I bought it on eBay. It doesn't put out any RF, and it does light up, and it does have 24 volts. So I started checking through it, seeing what I could find out that might be able to fix it. And in doing that, I used a couple of transistor testers. One of them is this tester right here. It's an Elenco kit that I put together that works pretty good. And the other one is up there. It's a Sencore TF46, and I'll show you how the Sencore works here in a second. The reason that I used the transistor testers is initially I didn't have a schematic for this unit. What I did have was a schematic for the SM158, which is the successor to the 152. Well, it turns out that a lot of the stuff, including the power supply circuitry, is very similar. But there are some things on this circuit that are not shown that are in this unit. So let me turn the unit around and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, now I've got the unit turned up on its face, and of course the back is removed. And if you look right in there, you'll see there's a 60 volt, and then next to it there's a 104 volt line. The 60 volt has the green wire on it. The 104 has the red wire, or maybe a little bit orange red. Well, it turns out that on the schematic for the 152, there's no such voltages. There are voltages of like 24 volts. Let's see, I can find that right there. You see on this side it's 24.3 volts, and then across this 10 ohm resistor to 24 volts on the other side, and so on. So I began testing the transistors around that area, and one of the transistors that I tested is the one that's shown in the, it's a little hard to see, that's right back here, and it's mounted down with a little clip that looks like this. That clip came off another transistor which is very near it, right there. And the reason I took the clip off was so I could try to read the type number, because it's not shown on the board. It's just TR305. The reason is TR305 tests bad, whereas this one over here, which when you put this this little heatsink back on it, looks identical to this one down here. So I was assuming they were the same transistor. Turns out they are, and I'll show you how I figured that out later. But so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how this transistor tests on the Sencore, and then I'm going to test this transistor, and you'll see that this one tests bad, whereas this one tests good. Now I have the Sencore TF46 connected to this transistor, the one that with the heatsink that's screwed down, and I'll show you how it tests here. Let me turn off this light, maybe make it easier to read. There it reads in the N section. This is an NPN, and it reads good. there it also reads good. And without getting into too much detail, the way the Super Cricket works is you should get, for an NPN transistor, no matter how you hook up these leads, you should get 2 places on this. There's a total of 6. And basically, they account for every combination. So you should get 2 places where it tests good. The reason is that for a bipolar transistor, and that's the way this is set up, the collector and the emitter are, for testing purposes, symmetrical. So basically, you have the base, which right now you see it says GRY. In other words, the G is the green lead, the R is the red lead, and Y is the yellow lead. And it's saying that the R lead is in the middle, that's the base. And the green and yellow are the collector and emitter. And if you notice this other position where it tested good, down here, the only difference is the 2 outside ones, the green and yellow, are reversed, but the red is still in the center. So that says this is a good transistor. Now let's hook it up to the one that doesn't test good. Now I have the TF46 connected to that transistor, and I once again connected the yellow and the green leads to the collector and emitter respectively, and the red lead to the base. So it should read the same as that other one, and in that position it does. But when I go to this position, it does not. The reason is that it turns out that the collector of that transistor is open. There are other ways to determine whether it's the collector or emitter, and in a minute I'll show you a little more of the basing and kind of how I came to that conclusion. But basically, the fact that you get no signal there, you do get one there. And then let's go through all the other positions in case it's some other transistor. And see, this is over in the PNP section. You may notice that you may hear a very faint thing there, but notice the meter doesn't swing. And back to the one section that does test good. And what that tells us is that the second transistor has a problem between the base and the collector. Well, you may ask yourself, well, why wasn't I doing other tests? Why didn't I check some things in the circuit? And once again, the reason is that I didn't have a schematic for this set, and the only schematic I did have was the one for the SM152 or 158, which doesn't show a 40-volt regulator. It turns out that transistor is the regulator for the 40-volt, or I'm sorry, 60-volt signal, which is right there. So I needed to get a replacement transistor. Let me turn this off. And the way I went about it was I started looking through, and here are some semiconductor reference books that I've collected over the years. By the time this book came out, which is the 10th edition of the NTE, about the only company still in business making these is NTE, and they have absorbed the old ECG. So I looked it up in here, and in looking through the NTE guide, one of the things that I found is that the recommended replacement is the NTE192A. That's this one, silicon transistors used for audio power output. So I ordered a few of those. I actually ordered 3 of them. By the time you pay postage on one, you might as well get a couple of spares. And they came in. Well, replacing that transistor seems to have fixed it. I'll show you what it looks like on the board in a minute. Tested at least the RF out here on a variety of ranges up to about 120 megahertz. The unit now does seem to work fine. So what I'm going to do here, I've got it plugged into my Variac, or I should say my variable isolation transformer. And so what I'm going to do now is unplug it, plug it in over here, and then show you a little bit of what I did, what I replaced. Well, here is the transistor that I replaced, and here you can see the new one right there. I also replaced the diode right down in there. It's called CR305. The one that was in there showed a little bit of reverse leakage. I thought it'd be a good idea to just go ahead and replace it too. I haven't replaced the capacitors. This unit is late 80s manufacture. I tested the capacitors. There doesn't seem to be much ripple on the, like this is 60 volts now, and that does work correctly. Remember, 60 volts was coming out over here. That comes right off of the collector of that transistor that we replaced, this one right in here with that heatsink on it. So I think I'm going to call this a done project. And the main reason for doing this wasn't really to show you how an SM152 works, because these are really not very useful these days, except for people that are working on TVs and FM radios. Old TVs, I don't mean digital, but the old NTSC. The real purpose of this was to talk about how you find replacements for semiconductors. And my advice is to get one of these NTE guides. It may be out of print, but I think you can still probably find some at places like Fry's Electronics and MCM Electronics, things like that might still sell you a copy. So anyway, that was the main purpose of showing you this, was how you can sometimes troubleshoot something without even having a schematic. If you have something like a transistor tester that will test in circuit, and if you have access to the right books to look up replacements and things like that. So that's it. I think I'm going to wrap this one up and put this back in the case, because I'm expecting some stuff from eBay that I bought on eBay tomorrow. And if it arrives, I know I'm going to want to clear the bench to check that stuff out. So that's it for the SM152. Pretty good piece of equipment, but a little bit out of date.